All right, we can call this meeting to order. It is 9:05. Do we have any members of the public present to speak?
Get a note from downstairs. No one here, Madam Chair. And I didn't get a note from anyone out front that anyone was in the lobby for us, so I think we are clear.
All right, let me get approval for the meeting minutes.
Madam Chair, if there's one correction was made by Jeff Walton yesterday in writing. I think we had marked McKay absent, but also McKay was a motion to close the meeting at the end, so we just made that correction. So when we motion to approve, we'll motion just with that correction.
Okay.
The other
Yeah.
thing I noticed, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Michael.
The other thing I noticed is at the end, the other members that have nothing to report, such as Roe, for example, but the at-large member and a few others, they're not mentioned as not reporting anything. I don't know whether that's significant or not. But the other attendees who did have something to report are all mentioned. And that's a good thing. I was just wondering if perhaps it might be tidy to just say none of the other members had anything to report.
Sure, we can do that, Michael. Like basically for Roe, we could just, on this
Yeah.
one and moving forward, just no update.
Right,
Something
yeah, no
simple.
update, yeah, that's the right word.
or
Does that make
something.
sense?
I'm okay with that. Veronica, is that gonna be okay with you?
I can do it. We've never done it before, but I can do it.
Don't looking to make work, but it seemed neater or tidier or something, I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe if the rep isn't present, we can just put not present, no update or not present, depending on the dynamic.
The attendance
There you
is
go.
on top of the attendance is on top, so. Okay.
Yeah,
Got it, noted.
Oh, I thought somebody was talking. Lieutenant, is that your radio going
Oh,
on?
I'm sorry. I'll turn it down.
It's okay. All right. Well, with that being said, can I entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes with the corrections that Chance had noted?
I'll move that.
All right, thank you, Michael. And can I get a second?
Second.
Who was that? Sean, Troy, Veronica, you take your pick.
Go Sean. Sean's lucky day.
Who beat who this time? All right. Thank you, guys. All right, moving on. New business. Chance?
Yeah, give us a second here, Veronica. Can you pop that PowerPoint up real quick? 1 second, we'll try to share our screen. Then just put it into slide mode. You can get to it. Slideshow, no, wait, go back. Slideshow, beginning. All right, Madam Chair, I think we're ready. Can everyone see the bright blue screen?
You can see,
All right. The only new business we have today, I know I promised no recommendations on the parking fees or any increases last month. One section we had forgotten about, and this was brought to my attention from the city manager's office, and they wanted us to look at it and offer some recommendations. Are the residential permit fees. These are the annual permits, the guest permits, long-term, short-term visitor permits, and then the two different types of kind of program permits, the 6 and 7 day full week program, and then at the bottom, the historic district permit, which is just the evening program of 11P to 3A. So I did a quick review. the benchmarks, I didn't put up any benchmarks here. The benchmarks, if you look at statewide benchmarks and really national benchmarks on these, they're kind of all over the place, to be honest with you. They range anywhere from, the state ranges anywhere from $0 charged in Durham for permits across the board. I think up to 30 in Charlotte, and even some of Charlotte's are free. It's kind of an odd dynamic. And then nationwide, they range anywhere from free up to, you know, a few $100s per permit per year. So on these, I just kind of was thinking locally, thinking equity, just thinking some nominal increases here, just to help continue to fund the program, make the program viable, and also just kind of look at it from an equitable standpoint in terms of what we're charging the residents on a very nominal, very affordable annual basis versus what we're charging, say, a resident that lives in the Central Business District parking at the Market Street parking deck. So left column in black is our current fees. These were last revised in 2019. I think in 2019 is when we took a pretty hefty revised program as a whole to council. We added the Sunday parking restrictions. We also shifted things around in the evening after we did our 6-month pilot. And that's when we offered some recommended fee increases there. So in black on the left, in red on the right, the main annual permit, which would be the first 3 that a property could purchase, recommended going from 40 to 65, and that is per year, not per month. So each permit, $65 per year. Additional permits above the 3, from 50 to 75. We don't have a lot of properties in the program that have those additional permits. I think there's maybe half a dozen properties that might hit over the 3 mark, and that's a couple multi-unit properties and just some spouses and kids that are at those properties. Long-term visitor permit, which is the permit that can be used for visitors pretty much in any form or fashion by the resident, going from 40 to 65 for the first permit and 100 to 125 for the second annual permit. 48-hour short-term visitor permits, which is the permit that allows the residents to purchase up to 10 per month, 48-hour short-term permits for, you know, weekend guests, parties, and that type. No recommendations there, keeping it at $5 per permit. And then the night only evening, 11 p to 3 a.m., 7 days a week, going from 5 to 15. I don't recall in my history of us ever increasing that historic district permit, which is, I think now only pertains to maybe 4 blocks left in the program, 3 blocks, 4 blocks, which is the far extreme south end of South Front and Nunn Street there, or South Front and South 2nd Street there. So nominal increases, I think we should we'll add these to the annual review. Apologies on missing these and not bringing them to the table last month. I don't see us changing these often, but I think this is still very, 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 very affordable annual fee for these permits. I think it's still an equitable approach, and I'm happy to open that up for questions, comments, concerns. Hopefully no one yells at me. Here for you.
How much revenue do you actually make off of these permits? I mean, if there's only 4 blocks within the historic district and you charge from 5 to 15, I mean, how much money are you really gaining by raising the rates? Like you said,
on that historic district, it's nominal. All in right now, we're I think we generated about $12,000 in revenue all in last year with the program and the permit side of the program. I think there's I don't know, roughly 150, 160 total properties maybe within the program. I might have that number wrong. These increases will generate an additional, I had it written down somewhere, sorry. Will generate an additional, I don't know, $5,000 to $6,000, I think. I had it written down, but sorry, I can't find it.
Okay.
When you say $12,000, Chance, that's for the entire program, from the annual, additional, long-term, short-term, et cetera?
Yes, sir. Here we go, Michael. Yeah, so all in last fiscal year, we generated right a little over 12,000. That's all in. That's the annual permits, the guests, short term, historic district, everything. The recommended increases is going to generate roughly 7,000 to 7,500 in additional revenue.
Well, to me, this represents an additional tax on the people who live in the historic district, row members. 40 to 65, is a substantial increase, percentage wise or whatever, however you want to look at it. Nobody buys, well, I shouldn't say that. Some people will buy one, a lot of people will buy two. The perception is that the historic district can afford it. I'll tell you, there's a lot of people who rent in the historic district and who are not, this is going to represent some money to them. I'm not sure that I would be, I'm just throwing that out. I don't think that's necessarily, I don't consider that to be, I wouldn't think that was equitable somehow. There's something about that really doesn't sit with me well. Additional permits, I'm not sure what they are, but you get down to the 48-hour short-term visitor. Chance, would that be the area, like if you were running a short-term rental property, an Airbnb or whatever, VRBO property, would those 48-hour short-term visitor permits, would they be the permits that you would buy?
No, they're not specifically geared toward, short-term rentals or anything. That's basically if I am the property owner at, say, 200 South 2nd Street. I'm just using that as an example. I don't know who lives there, no relation. I was the property owner at 200 South 2nd Street and I had a party next Saturday. I could come to Park Wilmington and buy up to 10 guests for short-term permits for that party at $5 per. So if I had 7 different vehicles coming over for the party, I could buy them. I could buy 7 permits, one for each vehicle at $5, $35 total.
Yeah, see, I would say too that if I was a short-term rental business operator, that I would gravitate towards that $5 ticket. And what that does in the scheme of all of those proposed increases, it shifts the burden onto the residents for the parking revenue that we're going to generate out of this, and accepts the short-term rental, the business people. I would prefer, it's the only category out of all 5 that doesn't get any increase. A smart business owner, and these people are all smart business owners, they would go to the $5 fee. I don't think it's fair, equitable. I don't think it's a good idea, again, to shift the burden for any increases that we want to realize out of this program to the residents and really give the business owners at that point a free ride. There are people that this is going to be a little bit of money for some people who live in the historic district, and the business owners walk away from this paying no increase. I don't think that's a good idea. I would not. I don't like that idea. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't have data on that 48-hour short term, but it's not geared toward the business, Michael. It's not geared toward short-term rentals. It's just the title is short-term visitor because of the 48-hour permit versus the long-term visitor.
Yeah.
We don't sell many of these. There might be, I don't know, 30 or 40 of these a year. There's not many that are truly sold. And as an example, a good example would be, like I said, the party, the visitors.
Sure.
But yeah, I noted your comments are definitely noted. I mean, if committee ends up voting to support this, I mean, we could double that up to $10 or $8 or whatever. My thought on it was, and honestly, I almost didn't offer a recommendation for just a historic district permit too, but since that had never changed in the 25, 30 years of the program, I figured it could be maybe time. But I'd be open to shifting that one up as well to, I don't know, $8 permit, $10 permit, I don't know. I mean, if you compare it to parking at a parking deck for the evening, say you're a resident in the CBD and you're having a party and folks are coming over and they're parking at Market Street deck, it's gonna cost them roughly, $14 per 24 hours. So, so this covers a full 48-hour period. So, I mean, I could happily go up to 10 or more. I mean, if really would lean on the committee for input on that one.
Yeah, I think just as an aside too, that you may start to see additional requests for parking sort of intervention on the part of the city as more of the short-term rental properties come online. There's one a couple blocks from us, which is going to bring 8 or more units online within the next year in a spot that's already somewhat crowded by the existing residents, and there's people talking about asking for some sort of permitted parking for their block. So,
yeah, Michael, I've received some correspondence from an owner, 500 block of Ann Street.
exactly the one. Is it Shaylee? I think her name is.
Yeah, and she's it sounds like she's been talking about her block and potentially 2 conjoining blocks there on 5th Street.
Yep.
Yeah, we've had some very, very preliminary conversations about the program and what's happening over there.
Yeah.
And as an example, the current residential parking permit has no impact on short-term rentals. If you have a short-term rental or an Airbnb within the district, that property owner can purchase permits just like that resident next door.
And then they should be asked to.
There are some parking restrictions within the zoning code and what the city was left with on what they could enforce after that court case. I think they are required to have off-street parking, and if they don't have off-street parking, it could be potentially a zoning infraction there. But I know there are zoning restrictions there within our RPP program. There are no restrictions as it relates to Airbnbs or short-term rentals.
Yeah, it seems unfair to me that the business would actually get some sort of subsidy in essence from the city at the expense of the long term, the people who actually live here. So, I mean, I would definitely think that needs to be on a par with what everybody else is paying, frankly.
Yeah, I think the short-term rentals that I'm aware of within the program, there's probably 2, 3 Airbnbs. And then I don't know, not known short-term rentals, maybe 2 that I'm fully aware of within the program. They purchase the exact same permits as those residents. They're buying those annual permits for their guests, that long-term visitor permit, and then the regular annual permits, because the short terms are kind of cumbersome. They're tricky. They only last 48 hours. So, but noted.
Chance, what's the need for increasing these fees? Like, are we covering increased costs for the parking team to maintain and manage that area? Or is it just for the sake of raising fees because we haven't done it in 6 years?
It's really the latter, Madam Chair. The city manager's office wanted us to look at it. Right now, there's no allocated need or allocated expense to cover the extra 7,500 as a whole right now.
Yeah, Chance, the only comments that I would have on this, looking back from 2019 to 2025 now, January to January, we've had basically a cumulative inflation rate of 25%, like across the board. Obviously, inflation is different in different sectors, but so if we were playing catch up and just looking at what was that $40, which is realistically, there may not be increased costs, but that $40 is no longer worth $40 by not increasing it. It's actually worth, $30. And so if we were to look at it from that perspective and play catch up, adding a 25% increase to any of these bills, and we want to keep them status quo at $40 would mean that, the annual permit would be $50.
Right.
The additional permits would be like 62. It wouldn't be quite as high as you have there. And those really my only comments. I'm indifferent in terms of if anyone feels very strongly that this is, unfair for members of this area of town, but I don't think anyone's shielded from the increased costs that we basically experience in every aspect of our life right now.
I kind of tend to agree with what Christina said, and that is what is it that you're paying for? And maybe that's a little unfair. I mean, I do recognize that individual services can't be paired out and said, well, and be related necessarily to a specific fee. We all pay fees for schools in the city, et cetera, without being able to relate it to a specific child, or even if you have children. But so I'm prepared to accept, Troy's observation that it's, just part of a general fund that we're a general effort that we're supporting. But I like his idea too, that, in terms of the inflation rate, that maybe it does need to be tied to that. That's a really good point. And again, I think that I'm not sure I understand the rationale for the 48-hour short-term visitor category as a whole. Yeah, I guess if you're having parties, et cetera, yeah, maybe I understand it. I don't know, but I just think that
Yeah, Michael, another piece, sorry to interject.
No, sure, yeah, sorry.
The 48-hour, that 48-hour pre the word short-term rental, before that even came into play, that 48-hour short-term visitor permit used to be 7 days. And I think the intent there originally was the same. You've got a couple family members coming in for a week during the summer. And at the time, we only had one long-term visitor permit option. So you had the ability to buy one permit and then a 7-day short-term permit. And at the time, former Councilman O'Grady shortened that window to 48 hours. So that's where the 2-day 48-hour came from. The short-term visitor option has been there for 30 years now. It's just the name change. And I think at the time, former Councilman O'Grady, some of the intent here was to kind of help with combat some of the growing short-term rentals and kind of shorten that option. But yeah, like I said, it's not business related, or at least from the creation of it, it's not business geared. It's really just an additional permit option for the residents, for those kind of notes I put out there. So
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, short term, that term's been around a long time and it's taken on a new meaning recently. I get that.
sure, we could rename it during the cycle if you'd like. Just call it. I don't know. I could come up with a different name and throw it in the fee schedule. Just call it just a normal visitor pass. We'd have the long-term visitor and then just visitor. We could get rid of the 48-hour short-term name if that helps.
Okay. Okay.
48-hour visitor pass.
Yeah.
The short
We just get rid of the short-term. Yeah, 48-hour visitor pass.
As long as the fees are comparable, because I'll tell you, business people they're smart and they should be. They may, they know how to make money and they know where the.
Yep. There's a cap on these. So you can only purchase 10 a month.
That's still going to be, I don't think that the Airbnb, the short-term rental property owners should pay less than the people who actually live in the district. I don't think that's fair.
And can we, would it be possible to take a look at this again with the actual, like usage and have some like graphs and charts of how much these have increased or decreased over the years as far as like the number of individual permits per each category? And then kind of look a little bit more in depth into like what kind of burden we are placing on these folks?
Sure, what do you mean by a burden we're placing on these folks?
I mean, you know, just depending on how many you have for each, I mean, there's.
We can get a sectional count of, you know, how many annuals, how many above the 4 mark, how many long-term visitor, you know, et cetera. Yeah, we can apply counts and, you know, a rate calculation of what we've generated, you know, previous years, and then what we would generate off of this. Sure. I will say that it should be noted too that this is a quote unquote voluntary program. The residents come to the city to petition the city to implement this program. Those same residents then come back to the city if they feel that it's not advantageous or too expensive to remove the program as well. So this isn't a forced per se. I mean, that those blocks have the ability to exclude themselves and drop this program if they feel the cost to bear the program outweighs the what I would say truly beneficial to these residents as well.
That means anybody can park on their block and we don't monitor.
Yeah, we can gather some more data and bring it back. What I will say, if there's no action taken today, what you have in front of you is probably what I'm going to put in my budget recommendation going to the city manager. And then any revisions that come out of the next meeting, whether supported or not, we would then take them. I think we would have a very, very short window at that point, but we could take any commentary or action or non-action coming out of the March meeting. Is there anything else? You know, so data, counts, quantities, how the program's grown, anything else that the committee would like to see in this?
And we don't have to shift a vote to another period. I was just asking if we could have that, if this committee is wanting to vote on this today.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, we can definitely send that out. The just high level, the quantities have essentially stayed pretty static, unless there is an expansion of a block. So, you know, like 2018, it was probably pretty static leading up to 17, 18. Then we added 2 blocks on Nunn Street, you know, the numbers bumped. Then it was static up till, you know, the next edition, which was 100 South 4th Street, numbers bumped a little bit, and so on. South Front Street recently, 300 block. So it's been pretty static, excluding any program expansions and added blocks. But yeah, I can, regardless of action, I can send those numbers out. Absolutely.
And just by comparison, I mean, you made $600. If there was 120 historic district residents that got obtained permits, you have made $600 off them for $5. But now you're going to be making $1,800 off of these. So that's a difference of $1,200 essentially. So, you know, the scale at which if we could shift some of that burden, like Michael said, to the 24-hour short-term visitor passes, or, you know, however much to accomplish that $7,500 goal that you're trying. And I don't know if that's the actual goal that you're making for it, or if it's just, and I'm sorry, I'm questioning so much on the actual need and the measurable goal that you're trying to see in terms of revenue. But
I mean, we could also, Madam Chair, I mean, back to Dr. Troy's comments, in terms of just looking at the inflation of this just in the last 6 years from 2019, if that is an easier mechanism to look at this one, I'd be happy to attach a 25% inflation rate to the current fees and land there, you know, obviously trying to round up or down to somewhat of a whole number. So let's say if it rounds from 50 to 57, making it 50 to 60 or something like that. But looking at everything with the inflation of 25% and, you know, making the $40 fee 50 and 50 plus 25% and so on.
Hey, Chance, as far as little old me is aware, and correct me if I'm wrong, residential permit parking is typically for residents and not to charge them so much because they live here. Is there a reason we couldn't charge higher permit fees in that area for commercial use, like Airbnb, for example, to offset some of that? Tie it to a car instead of a residence?
My first answer would be, we would need to consult with the city attorney's office based on any action that was taken in the recent court case on short-term rentals in the city of Wilmington.
That would be something.
What I will say, Michael, this is something that this is something that kind of goes toward your comment, and I think it's got a new name, but the verandas, the bed and breakfast, the bed and breakfast there at Nunn and South
Nunn
Second.
and Second, yeah, no, South Second and Nunn.
So not a short-term rental per se in the grand schemes of what we see as a short-term rental these days, but it's essentially a bed and breakfast hotel, right?
It has been in the past, absolutely.
Yeah, in the district, part of the program. Historically, they had been granted those long-term visitor permits at the long-term visitor price of $40 across the board. Prior to our change in 2019, they were purchasing them at a price of $25 per visitor permit, I think. Then it bumped up. And now they purchased 10, and all those extra permits are $100. So, I mean, they're a good example to where they're purchasing the long-term visitor permits versus those 48-hour short-term permits. I don't know if that helps with part of your commentary, but they don't purchase those $5 permits, and they're getting hit with that escalating $100 extra permit fee across the board.
Yeah, I mean, it's always, I guess, I don't want to say it this way, it's good that somebody didn't see the loophole, I guess is what you're saying. But there is a loophole, and I think we need to address that.
Yeah.
Is there going to be a public hearing on this, or are we just raising rates?
No, this, the residential permit fees are within the fee schedule. So this will just be part of the recommended budget process. There is a public hearing on the city's budget. There's a first reading, there's an introduction, first reading, and second hearing. So there's 3 options for, you know, if we were to recommend this, whether it be at the rates in red or a 25% inflation type escalator. There would be at least three opportunities for the public to speak in front of council during the whole budget process. And DPAC doesn't have to support. I mean, it's one of those things, you know, the committee does not have to support everything we bring to it. You know, if you say we staff recommends either the red or the 25% escalator to the manager, for the city manager's budget, I mean, we can obviously put that in there with the narrative that, you know, DPAC's not supportive of this, so. And then it's really up to the manager to 100% put it in its recommendation, and then ultimately up to the city council to adopt.
I suppose I could support an increase tied to inflation. That does seem fair. But what does not seem fair is that a business would be able to to take advantage of a lower rate. I think if you own a property, then you get the same treatment as anybody else. An owner of a property is an owner of a property. And that's whether it's, people who live in there or people who use it as a business and rent it out. That should not, we shouldn't be subsidized. The residents should not be subsidizing businesses. And that's, I really feel strongly about that. I will not support something that does that.
Michael, we could, on that one specifically, we could get Pivot to take a deep dive on that 48-hour purchase. They can tie those purchase of permits back to individual properties. We can take a deep dive on that and bring back to the committee.
Would you mind doing that, Chance? Would you mind? Yeah, I hate to add to your burden. I know, I'm sure you got enough to do without.
No, we can tie, like I said, the volume of those isn't a lot. We can easily tie those back to property purchases, and from what we know and what we don't know, we could probably easily tell you whether it's a single family resident with residents in there versus, the handful of short-term rentals that are out there in the district, who's really purchasing that. Yeah, we could take a deep dive on that. And at the same time, this is something too, the overall guidelines, the 48-hour short-term permit option and all this stuff is within the guidelines that ultimately has to go to council if you were to change any narratives there, not necessarily fees, but the narratives and scope. This is something we can look at too the next time we bring any kind of overall program changes to council. This is, that's something we can look at and take a deep dive on too. So,
okay, cool.
Yeah, I can get Pivot to do that pretty quickly. And even prior to next meeting, just send it out as an FYI, just so you guys have that data. And then back to Christina's request to just overall, how many properties, how many are purchasing each one, and then a deep granular dive on that 48-hour line.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. And if there is potential support for the 25% inflationary rate, I like I said, I think from the staffing level, I would be 100% okay with that, and I could add a number. I can add that calculation to it and make that our recommendation.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So would there be a potential motion of support for the current fees plus a 25% inflation escalator?
I'd be happy with that. I'd be okay with that.
I'm not opposed to the increase. I just think the increase on there is pretty substantial.
It is.
So if we were to do a quick calculation, it would make the annual from 40 up to 50. It would make the hang tight, I got some fat fingers here. It would make, if you buy 4 or more, $6,250. So would the committee be okay with rounding that up to 65, or would you prefer to keep it at like 63? And then the long term would be the same. It'd be 40 up to 50 for the first, and then 100.
I would change just to add a comment to that. At 65, I think seems fair. We're already talking about additional permits. That's not even the base permit. That extra $3 a year. I can't imagine anyone's gonna have a problem.
Not every property purchases that second one. It's those properties that have a lot of visitations and stuff. So if you made that 65, the long-term visitor would go from 40 to 50, and then the 100, the second long-term visitor would go to
30.
125, which is where we had it. If you wanted me to drop that down a little bit, I'd be happy to say, if you want to go 115 there, maybe a little less than the 25%.
Yeah, that'll work.
48-hour short-term visitor. adding 25% makes it 6, or we could bump that one up. Michael wants to drive that one a little more.
It needs to be, I guess, and I know we're taking a lot of time on this, and I don't mean to, but a short-term visitor would be, it would strike me as you'd have to have, before you had a short-term visitor at your property, you would have to be in the program already and have at least 1 or 2 annual permits.
Correct. Yeah.
You know what I
correct.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Correct.
to eliminate the loophole there, I think the way to do that would be to say you can only get a short-term visitor permit if you had at least, and I'll say 2 annual permits initially. And then that needs to be in line, at $5 is too small. I mean, it needs to be an increase there. Does that make sense? I mean, that's the equitable argument from my standpoint.
Yeah, you're also, I'm playing devil's advocate here on that one. You're also looking at, another example where these were used. Michael Smith, well-known resident in the district, passed away last year.
Yeah.
During his funeral and visitations to the house, Celeste, I mean, this was the permit that she came to our office and bought for those visitations. So it is for some legitimate uses as well. So just putting that out there.
Okay. As long as the loophole to me is that they could be the only pass that you get. Do you know what I mean? So if you have to, in order to get a 48-hour short-term pass, it would seem equitable to me that you'd have to have some existing permit already. So.
Yeah, and we'll take that deep dive to show that if we're finding some anomalies there, then yeah, I mean, I think that's something that we can definitely hit the overall guidelines with. And I like that in general. Yeah, I like that in general.
Okay, cool.
So in terms of the fee and recommendation, if we're gonna put an escalator on, do you put the 25%, make it $6, or do you want to bump this up to, I don't know, $8? Either way, it's pretty economical option for those folks that are actually using this.
I think if we put that caveat in there for the 48-hour short-term visitor,
Yep.
that eliminates the burden, I guess, or the loophole.
Yeah.
So keeping it at the escalator and making it $6 with some constraints or some parameters, I guess.
Well, that would work. Christina, what do you think?
I mean, if we're going to be, raising all these rates by 25%, I mean, I guess it would be suitable to raise that as well. I personally, I don't see the difference between a $5 rate or a $6 rate.
Right. Yeah, that was kind of the thinking that came into this when it was already pretty small. It's a low number. I didn't take the deep dive that Mr. McGinty was looking at. So really, if I'll let the committee drive this one, what we want to do. With the parameters, make it $6, or with the parameters, make it $10?
$10 sounds right.
Like I said, this one isn't. There's not a lot of purchases on this one, so it's
right.
It's not. I don't think it's as burdensome, so to speak, for those legitimately using it as your top 3 numbers there.
Yeah.
And then the historic district program, we also kind of do the same. There's only 3 blocks left. The increase is nominal. We can meet in the middle and save $10 as well.
All right, that'd be great.
Okay. So quick review: 25% inflationary, excluding the 2 lines. So 40 up to 50, 50 up to 65, 40 up to 50, 100 up to 125. The 48-hour visitor, I won't even mention that middle term. 48-hour visitor up to 10, and the historic district, which is the evening only, 5 up to 10. And from staffing perspective and what we're trying to accomplish here, I think this is a very valid, smart acceptable.
Yep.
So with that, is it motion time?
I will move it to those numbers which you had mentioned, and of course with the caveat that the short term, that the 48-hour visitor pass is only available to those people who already have at least, well, I'll say 2 annual permits, if people are acceptable for that. That would be my motion.
Can I get a second on Michael's motion? Any other comments?
Second that.
All right, second from Troy, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have 2 ayes. Anybody else? Any nays? For Veronica's sake, everyone, if you could please cast your vote on this. So I need a show of hands or
Will
comment.
you,
All in
will you
favor?
just restate the motion?
So we have, Michael has passed has called for has approved a motion to approve the 25% increases on each of these line items on the rates with a $10 increase for short-term rental and with a $10 fee for short-term rental, and I believe a $10 fee on the historic district permit. Chance, is that what you have written down?
Correct. Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair.
And then applying a condition for the 48-hour short-term visitor pass that a permittee has to have 2 permits in order to obtain a 48-hour short-term visitor pass.
If I'm not mistaken, Michael motioned, Troy second. We had yays from Troy and Michael.
And
I think
myself,
we need to take a round table. Sean, are you a yay or nay?
I'm a yay.
McKay, you a yay or nay?
I'm a yay, but just with what you mentioned earlier, Chance, about the short-term rental thing.
Yeah.
Just making sure that's all. We're gonna look
Yeah,
into that.
got it. I think in this case, we wouldn't be charging anyone more specifically by the use. It would just be putting just a tiny parameter on those eligible to purchase. I think we'd be fine.
Then, as they say, yay.
And if for some reason we can't put a parameter like that in the fee schedule, then we can take a deep dive on that one with the overall residential guidelines and look at that next time we take that thing to council.
Yeah, if we can't put that parameter in, I would not support this.
Okay.
So that to me is kind of the operative. So I guess, do we have enough information to vote on it?
Okay, McKay, would you like to make a counter motion to hold the vote then until we obtain further information?
Sure.
Yeah, I just assumed that we would be able to get that chance, but you're saying now that we maybe not be able to get that caveat?
Yeah, we can, I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, all right.
Within the fee schedule.
Okay.
It's
I'm
just
not sure if that would, I'm not sure if
legal.
we could put that wording in there with the fee schedule, or if that would be something we'd have to look at some purchasing type parameters within the guidelines, so.
Or should we, okay, so you don't want any increases if we can't increase the Airbnb, so there's no point in approving what we can't approve right now.
That's it. I agree with that, yeah. So I guess what we're saying is that we'll postpone this for a vote until we know what we're being asked to vote on.
Yes, so a counter motion has been set to Michael's motion. And so McKay, you wish to table this until we gain more information on the short-term rentals. Can I get a second to that motion? Am I following the rules correctly, Veronica?
Well, can I ask so are you voting or you're not voting? That's where I'm a little confused at, because it sounds like you're not voting until you're sure.
We had a vote, we had a motion on the table, it was seconded. In the midst of second, a counter motion came in. And the
So we-
committee, the committee is,
And I think, Madam Chair, I think, maybe we can simplify this. I think we can put a motion for Michael's motion forward. And then I can come back in March with input from city attorney and also a deeper dive on that 48-hour. And if there's constraints on Michael's motion that we can't push forward with that within the fee schedule, I mean, the committee can take another vote of action, or we can just overall just table the item until March, I think.
Or we can conditionally approve it.
Yep,
So
yep.
we can approve it conditioned on the legality of that.
Yep.
Can you express verbally the legality so that I can put this on record?
Veronica, we're, the,
No, I'm
com-
asking McKay because McKay
Oh.
said it. Okay, thank you, I'm sorry.
The motion would be to approve the fee schedule as presented with the condition that we can legally raise the rates on just the Airbnb users.
Not necessarily, wait, I think.
I
if we're-
don't know how to
if we're-
phrase it.
Yeah, I think, let me interject here if I may. I don't think we can legally charge additional fees for short-term rentals. So let me make that clear.
Right.
What the condition that I think that was presented earlier was if we can require those purchasing the 48-hour visitor permits, which is the 2-day permits for $5, that they also, the parameter would be that they have already purchased two of the long-term visitor permits, right? So before they could roll into that $5 short-term for visitors, or take short-term word out of it, we can rename that, number one, but number two, for a property owner to be able to purchase that 48-hour visitor permit, they would have to also have already purchased the first and the secondary long-term visitor permit. Correct, Michael?
That is it. That's absolutely right.
Yeah, I would say if we're really isolating, if we're isolating single family versus short-term rentals, then I think you tabled this whole discussion because I think there's already case law on this, and I don't think that DPAC should be going down that route to put parameters on property use and short-term versus long-term versus single family, so.
Yeah, we're not gonna win that battle. I mean, that seems clear, but it also seems clear that the 48-hour visitor pass was intended for people who were already had some, were already living in the.
Correct, yeah.
Already had it, so yeah.
I'm gonna throw one more wrench in the chain. Why two? Why can't a single person who has one permit obtain a short-term 48-hour for a friend who's visiting or a family member?
That's a good point.
Valid question, yeah. I mean, you probably have some single family homes with one owner. Probably have a couple apartments, there's a couple multi-use properties there. I mean, I know there's at least one or two on South
I can think
Force.
of people. Yeah, I can think of people.
I mean, here's just adding back to it. Maybe the smartest thing here is to table the discussion until March. And I will send out prior to the March 19th to 20th meeting, a deep dive on who's purchasing those 48-hour permits. And I think by seeing properties that are purchasing and how many and at what volume, which is really, it's nominal. I think hopefully that will hopefully ease some of Michael's concerns there. Maybe not.
Well, I'm fine with tabling this, so we can get some more information on it.
Sure.
I think we've all agreed on the rates, so we can just bring it to another vote once we have the information.
Sure.
Yep, I'm okay with that.
Let's do that.
Should we break for lunch?
Lieutenant, did you bring donuts and lunch, man?
No, but I could go get some, that's for sure.
Appreciate everybody's engaging conversation on this item. Can we move on?
Absolutely.
All right, let's go into item number 5, old business informational. Chance.
May I ask, can everyone still see the PowerPoint?
Yes, I can see it.
All right, get my ducks in a row here. Of course, I don't have everything. So FY25 Q2 parking financials. Overall revenues, you're trending up year over year, 25 versus 24, up approximately $379,000, which is roughly 12%. I think you'll see in the latter sides what that's comprised of. There was a 50-cent increase in the on-street rates, which reflects during this period. There were no other off-street rates, but there are increases revenue-wise with the Skyline parking deck being open a full 6 months as compared to a full 6 months with less activity in previous year. Second Street lots trending up, and one of the big ones that's trending up are the parking citation revenues, and a lot of that has to do with the previous year was the start of Pivot Parking's contract. So it took them, I would say, a good 60+ days to really get a lot of those citations that were issued at the first few months, July and August of 23, really in the system, collected, and kind of start that trend. So that's really what's driving these increases here. If you break it out, on street, meters up 135,000, which is 12%, and then citations, which is a big increase, but I think it's reflective of those first few startup months from Pivot, 117,000 or 43% up on the citation revenue. What's interesting on this, you'll see in the next slide, but since I've been here, what we have historically seen is when our citation revenue goes up, our hours purchased on street goes down, meaning less people are purchasing on street meters and getting cited, right? They seem to be in line with each other, at least the years that I've been here. Now some of this has to do with the Pivot startup, but when you look at the on-street hours, we've actually jumped up the on-street hours, which is a positive. We've jumped up 8% year over year, and that's with a 50-cent per meter, 50-cent per hour increase, reflective on that comparable data of the first 6 months of the fiscal year compared to the first 6 months of last fiscal year. So not only do we have more people paying, we've got more people not paying, or more people not paying quite enough, depending on what those citations look like. So it's almost like a double increase on the on-street parking usage there, which is an interesting one. I think this is the first time I've seen those relatively both increase there. So suffice to say, I'm hearing businesses saying people aren't coming downtown. Parking increases are too much. Year over year on street with a 50-cent increase, we're bumping up 8%. So people are coming downtown.
That's great.
Off street Q2, another positive there on the parking deck side, the lighter blue, we're up 11%, 152,000. What's mainly driving that is really Skyline parking deck being in full service for a full 6 months, and that's after being open for a full year. Some additional tenants of the building paying monthly parking, concert usage at that parking deck bumping up. There were some minor decreases at Market and Second Street deck comparatively. We haven't taken a deep dive on that, but on the surface, it looks like some of those drops at Second Street specifically are related to the city moving offices. And then at Market Street, film moved to the north end at the vacant lots. As well as we shifted some of the monthly parkers at Market Street to Second Street during the construction project. So I think there's some legitimate narratives there on why those two are down. And then just overall with Skyline opening up, I think it's just spread some of the usage from the core downtown to the north end, especially during concerts. I think the Skyline's probably capturing a good chunk of parkers that first and second concert seasons may have been parking at Second Street, Market Street, the core, and making that walk. So I think what we're seeing is a spread there. The parking lot columns, Royal Blue there, we're up 28,000, about almost 8% increase there. The Second Street parking lot has seen an increase in business. I think Second Street is up by a few percentage points. And then another piece of that increase, which is put into this column, is we're parking event parkers at the old Salvation Army lot on the north end. So I think about 8,000 of that, 8,000+ of that 28,000 increase there on the parking lots is due to the Salvation Army. And then the remainder is the Second Street lot, seeing a lot more activity year over year there. I think that's it on the revenue financials. Before we go into just the overall updates, are there any questions here?
Chance, are you guys year over year since purchasing, and I guess it hasn't been quite long enough yet, but are you seeing a increase in the amount of usage at the Skyline deck? And then second question, do you think overall parking is remaining flat if you don't take that into consideration?
Great questions. Skyline usage currently is you got two main drivers there. Number one, Skyline building use. You got on average, I'd say 175 to 200+ city employees parking there. As the city offices transition, that's stayed pretty static. You've got the building tenants parking there. There's been a slow increase there month to month as tenants were added. But I'd say right now it's fairly static in looking at it, not necessarily year over year, but over the last 6 months, it's pretty static. The other driver is the Live Oak Bank Pavilion and concert revenues. We've seen a significant increase from opening those first 6 months compared to the previous 6 months, and then the 6 months of this year. There's been a slow, steady increase there per concert. I think first concert we opened the doors, we parked maybe a little over 100 parkers. I think our max concert over the course of the calendar year last year, we hit the 400 to 500 range for one of those sold out concerts. And on average, we're parking about 300 parkers a concert. And that's inclusive of the Live Nation employees. Live Nation also parks their employees there during events and pays that same rate for the employee there. But our goal there, honestly, is to keep driving that number. Our budgeted goal is around the 500 parkers per concert. I think that's our sweet spot. We're hitting around the 300 mark now. Your second question, overall, I would say off street, if all things remain the same and you pulled out Skyline and the event lots out of that equation, I think you're probably very even with year over year, Christina. But then on the on-street side, I think we're seeing an increase on the on-street usage side. So I think if you combine the two, you're probably up a few percentage points in terms of just overall parking activity, if you're comparing apples to apples without kind of the spread on the north end.
Okay. And one more question for you. Is the city seeing more by way of the tenants that are coming into the Skyline Center building and also the Harrelson Center building? Are you guys seeing more monthly permits due to employees that need to be within these buildings for these new companies that are rolling in?
Skyline, it seems to be case by case, depending on how big the lease is and the lease structure. Some of those lease structures have parking underneath the building, which revenues stay within kind of the building model. And then some of the larger leases have X number based on the size of the lease downstairs. And then anything above that lease size goes across the street. It's really tenant by tenant, honestly. Obviously, the bigger the tenant, the more use we're gonna get out of the bigger Skyline deck there on the north end. We've seen at Second Street as a whole, I mean, we lost, I think the city transitioned, and unfortunately, I don't have those hard numbers in front of me, but the city transitioned, close to 200 parkers to the north end and Skyline from Second Street. I think non-city monthly parking, we've regained a hefty chunk of those at Second Street. I didn't look at the numbers as a whole, but the revenues weren't down significantly. If you take that out as a comparison, it was actually probably a net positive if you have that as a comparison, which means we backfilled at a pretty good rate. I don't think we backfilled at the numbers the city relocated, but at Second Street, we backfilled at a very positive rate there.
And is that because of the companies that the city is putting into the Harrison building?
Specifically the Harrison building, I don't think so, no.
Okay.
I think it's downtown as a whole. I think in your last year, the city has not put in any new tenants at the Harrison building that would have affected parking, excluding kind of the ongoing negotiations with the GSA and that larger lease we talked about a few months ago that hasn't really been inked yet. The other tenants that are at the building have been there for a bit. I think the only newer one is the foundation that's there, and I don't think they've brought in a sizable chunk of parkers. So I think it's nominal at best right now. So I think specifically at the Harrelson, there hasn't been a whole lot of revenue or a whole lot of activity driving that deck use there.
And then the current leasing, the folks who are leasing in, but by the last resolution passed in City Council for Tovia Wealth Management and Protocase, do those come with leases to or monthly parking passes to the deck, or are they going under that underground?
It's based on the size of the lease. I think with the expansion, Protocase got 2 extra parkers downstairs within the building. They're one that already has, I think it's Protocase. Protocase already has some monthly parkers across the street that they're paying for. And then the wealth management, I'll have to look into that one. I don't recall any activity that hit the deck with that one.
Okay, thank you.
And then just some quick updates overall from the city side. Convention Center capital project is complete. I think a lot of these are just rehashing from last month. The Market Street capital project is nearing completion still. I think the cold, snowy weather in January, as well as some of the wet weather late January into February, and now we're getting cold again, just slowed down the painting project. I think there's just some touch-up pieces that have to get completed now and when we're finished. And I apologize, next month I'll bring in some pretty photos of what we've done on those elevator lobbies and the stairwells, but they look great. Each facade on the elevator landings, floor 1 through 7, both sides, have a different color on that facade. So, 7 East is purple, 6 West is green, and so on. And the ultimate long-term goal there is to also have some wayfinding with the parking deck that color codes and matches those lobby colors. So if you're coming into the deck, you're parking on the 5th level on the Second Street side, your elevator landing is going to be orange, and everything that says where you parked is also going to have signage that reflects that orange color of 5 East, and then vice versa. If you say you park on the second level on the Front Street side. It'll be purple with color coded signage that will hopefully guide you back to where you parked. So it's part wayfinding and also just part vibrant aesthetics that we're trying to kind of put into the deck over there.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Small concrete repair project at Skyline. We're getting that one scoped out with engineering. There was a support haunch that kind of crumbled. Non-emergency repair, but definitely priority repair. We're getting quotes right now through our engineer. And then the Market Street East Side elevator has been repaired. And actually there's an update from this bullet point. The state inspected it yesterday. So we've got 2 working elevators at Market Street again, which is a very big positive there. And Madam Chair, I will pass this on to Corinne from Pivot if she's still on here to talk about her 2 or 3 slides.
Okay.
Good morning, I'm still here. This is a long meeting though. We overall for every meeting, I always give you guys individual months. Obviously, I'm just compiling for the Q2 data to show you. So my overalls for citations, we issued for the 3 months, it was 8,547, paid was 6,793, and that led to a whole collection percentage of 79% for the overall Q2, which is actually very high and significantly well. So I also am presenting the payment methods for the on-street. So we have pay by phone, and then I'll talk about text to park. And the same thing, you see the individual transaction, the individual revenue stream for the 3 months, and then the overall for the Q2, which transactions brought in about 45K and then revenue just under 164.
Ren?
Yeah.
Just a quick question. So in November, the number of transactions were 13,828, and then the transactions 13,924. Is that just people, because people aren't staying as long in those 3,900 versus the 3,800? The revenue is lower.
The revenue is lower. I think it has to do a lot with the weather occurring, especially in December. You know, meters are free for holidays, and even in November you have Thanksgiving that's free and small business Saturday and things. So there was more free on street areas compared to October.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And then this is your text to park Q2 data. This is exclusive of the lots. This is only on street. If you include the lots in this total, text to park actually compiled an 11% increase compared to pay by phone. And so your overall transactions just for on street strictly were about 32K, with revenue reaching 128K. If you include the lots, which pay by phone on my other slide did include the lots, your overall revenue for text to park all in all for an apple to apple comparison was 181,097. So this is the first quarter that I think text to parks actually outstanded pay by phone. The other update that I just had really quick was to talk about the power washing that occurred. 929 deck has been completed. The Market Street deck is completed. Weather delayed the weekend work due to the cold front that occurred. So Monday, Convention Center will start their wash, followed by River Place the first week of March. I'm open to any questions if there are any.
Questions? Thank you, Corinne. All right, city administrative, that was Corinne. Oh, organizational reports. I'll move on to Lieutenant Nichols, WPD.
Good morning. I can be pretty quick. Just stat wise, we had 121 charges last month. 16 of them being drug charges, 12 were misdemeanor, 4 felony. We had 6 DWIs, down here. We did our ABC and ALE guys did 10 bar inspections with 2 violations. And I'm sure Christina, you'll probably go into this a little bit, but the social district really, we have not seen any issues on our side of the house. It's been a success in my opinion. Like I said, there's been little to no law enforcement needs at all up there, and it's been handled pretty well. Other than that, we just have the marathon this weekend down here, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Any at-large members with any updates? All right, moving on to Cape Fear Community College, Sean.
Not a lot to update. We went live with our Nut Street deck, January 29th. Had some hardware issues. We've been trying to sort through those, trying to get it back online so we can get parking for Wilmington Marathon and especially for next weekend with Comic-Con. There will be a ton of people. We're going to try to have them ready for that, but we'll see. That's all I got.
All right, wonderful. Thank you for the update, Sean. DBA, we don't have that seat filled quite yet, so I will move on to New Hanover.
Looks like, Christina, we got Justin on. There's 2 DBA seats.
Justin. Yes, please. Justin, anything to report?
Maybe not.
Okay. We'll come back to him if he chimes in a little bit later. New Hanover County. Row.
No, nothing for Row.
Okay. And for WDI, yes, we had what I believe to be 3 successful social district pilot days in the Brooklyn Arts District. We did have a few concerns, I think Chance mentioned, from residents who were having some parking issues on that block. We did receive 2 complaints regarding parking issues. WDI tried to tote the social district as an event for everyone and to help navigate parking by asking folks to stay off of 5th and 6th Streets in the neighborhoods and go to the Skyline Center parking deck and enter the social district area by way of Brunswick Streets. Chance had so graciously helped us out with putting an event parking sign out on 4th Street at Brunswick. I did see a few cars going down there. I don't know if they were actually going to the deck or not, but I did see a few crowds coming by way of Brunswick Street. So Chance presented a few parking numbers. We had a lot of parkers, I think over 120 on the first day. A little bit lower figure, less than 100 on the second day. And Chance, I haven't had a chance to touch base with you about the third day, whether or not parking had increased for the last day of the social district. But as far as parking is concerned, those are kind of the highlights for the social district. In general, business revenue was increased anywhere from 100 to 500%, depending on who you asked. So I think it was a successful model for the 3 days, and we'll work with the city going forward with the next steps. All right. So with that, I will, Justin has bumped off, so I will take a motion to adjourn.
I will move that.
Thank you, Michael. Second.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, sign off. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care.